Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first VolCon 2025 session on securing the future, navigating AI vulnerabilities, and evolving security practices. I am Lisa Bradley, and I have my partner here, Sarah Evans. We're going to do a quick introduction. I could figure out how to change the page. There we go. Okay, so again, Lisa Bradley, I'm the Senior Director for Dell Technologies in the Product and Application Security space. I call my team PRADA, which we focus on product remediation and dependency assurance, primarily focusing on product security and ensuring that we know about all of our dependencies and that we are knowing about the vulnerabilities in our dependencies. So PSIRT is also underneath me. We also drive remediation of other control gaps like weaknesses besides just vulnerabilities. I've been in security space for over 12 years. I went to Geneseo for my undergrad and NC State for my PhD. And I also have done teaching for 12 years where I taught on the side while I've been working full time. So I started off my career at IBM. I went to NVIDIA for a few years, and I've been at Dell for over 5 years. Okay, Sarah, why don't you do your intro?
Yeah, so I work in the office of the CTO. I do security innovation research. This means that I get to take my IT operations and security operations background and bring it up to the beginning of design lifecycle for Dell products and services and really think about how the technology that we're experimenting with and innovating with may affect our customers' security and supply chain. I have an MBA from Missouri State University and have also taught in the Computer Information Systems program there. I am a veteran of the Air Force. I did retired after 21 years. And when I'm not trying to figure out how to help improve the security industry, I am hanging out with my family and my 2 golden retrievers.
Great. So let's get started here. When we think about AI in our space and AI, it's really been growing in the software product space. So we started off where, AI would give you personalized content or, hey, recommendations. Maybe you should like this or you might like that. We then started to see more AI-powered chatbots within our products and virtual assistants to help navigate with our users that are using our products. Then all of a sudden, as we keep advancing in here, we realize that AI tools can actually generate our code snippets, identify bugs, and really do a lot of the coding or support our coding efforts behind the software within our products. We've also been focusing on learning about more how we could do more automation testing with AI to ensure that our software is higher quality with fewer defects. As we keep going along the path here, we then are seeing AI being used in analyzing historical data to make predictions about future trends and behaviors, and then also processing data in real time to make quick decisions based on current information. We know that AI will continue to be integrated more and more into the software, enhancing all of our product capabilities. And I like to joke around, but I actually had AI even generate this slide. So AI is, an evolving space that we have been paying attention to, and we're going to focus on within this presentation. You want to take the slide, or Sarah, you want me to?
Hey, Lisa, did you advance to the next slide?
I did.
So I have a little delay on my end. Okay, I'm seeing the AI threat sources now. Sorry for that.
Perfect. All good.
Awkward pause there. Okay, so as somebody who has a security operations and an IT background, we talk a lot about risk and what type of risk we're trying to reduce. And so I became very interested in understanding what is happening in these machine learning models and these large language models that's adding new areas of risk. And so I went over the past year and I earned a certificate through a university, kind of really honing in on AI and ML. And then I brought back what I learned to how we were talking about risk and how we were talking about AI in the security community. And so internally at Dell, we were developing our threat modeling team was developing a library of AI threats. And then also we were seeing some really great industry resources like OWASP coming up with top 10s for machine learning and large language models that I thought were very compelling. And so this slide actually leverages this visual leverages the aggregate machine learning and LLM top 10. And what you'll see is like that little burglar face, those are risks or those are threats. And so what they assign to the different parts of an architecture that say, hey, based on how the AI, the application is leveraging AI in its processes, here's where you have a risk of leveraging AI components in that application. And so as we start to look at these different threat sources, it starts to give us a really nice way to identify what are those risks. And then above and beyond that, where are these risks part of an initial system? And where are they in a maybe potentially newer expanded risk in a system that we haven't classically seen in the past? Lisa?
Right. So when we think about our AI related vulnerabilities and we want to start thinking about it, we have to think about three different aspects here. When we are utilizing AI, we have to make sure that we are protecting the data that we're actually putting into the system. So if you're asking it questions and things like that, or feeding it in parts of your code, you want to make sure that your system is protected to make sure that none of your proprietary data or IP data is leaking out of it. So you need to think about extending your security vulnerabilities related to AI in the space of, I am putting my information into a system, how do I protect it? We then think about, in the AI space, about the different components. So we have to think about our training models, our regular models, the model response, all of that data and the training data, and making sure that the different components that are involved with the AI space are actually protected. So we need to go and extend our security hygiene principles to those AI specific components that are within the application. And lastly, what we have to remember is that this is running on a system. So we need to make sure that we're applying a regular application security hygiene on the data and our software. So what's happening in the AI space is a lot of people are moving very quickly because they want to use AI. They want to utilize it. They want to get the benefits from it. But we have to remember that we have to protect it in every aspect, in every sense of the way, whether it's the data we're putting in and to train it, or the constant data we're feeding it when we're actually utilizing it, or the system that it's on. So when we're thinking about our AI related vulnerabilities, they can actually be found in all stages of the AI lifecycle and the supply chain. So including the data, the models, and the actual deployment. So we're thinking about our AI related vulnerabilities that are our weaknesses and, that are used, not only within the applications of the AI, but the actual output that you would get from it. So it may be that there is a vulnerability that existed in the training data or the training model. And then that is then feeding back bad information to maybe your end users when they're actually utilizing the system and asking it for questions or feedback. So there could be vulnerabilities that the AI system is actually generating for you within code that you're getting from it, and it's a new way of thinking. Like typically, if I'm in charge of the system and you're my end user using it, you're just thinking, hey, keep that system updated and protected and I'm good. But I might have to say to you, hey, there was a vulnerability in like the data that we actually fed into the system, and that might have gave you bad output. And therefore, you now need to do some action because you potentially would have gotten bad output. And this is a different way of thinking when we think about vulnerabilities for a system that maybe, a big corp type of, is maintaining, but you were just an end user of the using it. You now might need to know about a vulnerability because it might have caused bad content that you now collected. So when we're thinking about the threats and the future of what AI is going to do in our core threat landscape, we believe that there are three main areas that we are going to see more threat actors playing with. So first is poor system architecture and operational hygiene. So this will provide rich attack surfaces to threat actors. As I was saying, people are moving very quickly in the space. So if they're not protecting or not doing all the right protection along the way or designing it in the right way, then it's easier to be to have bad actors go and infiltrate those systems. Then thinking about the supply chain of security. So poorly integrated supply chain security will cause, like an upstream vulnerability in the AI technology. So we're innovating in the space, but we need to make sure that we're protecting along the supply chain. And if we don't, which is, like I said, we're moving so quickly and we're grabbing data here, or models from here, or models from there. When we're putting all that stuff together into a system, if we're not having strong security practices along our supply chain and making sure that those components or those different suppliers that we're using to get that information have good hygiene and practices, then we're going to allow another area that bad actors can act on. And the last is on that actual data management and classification. So the data management of the data going in, and what are we doing when we're getting more and more data fed into the system? We need to make sure that we are doing the proper management classification so that there's no IP leakage of any information, or the fact that there's no infiltration into that data set that we're going to be feeding into the system. So when we think about our identification and classification of AI vulnerabilities, there are three different areas. We need to think about the actual stage. Sorry, I think I'm going to sneeze. The actual stage of where that vulnerability might have been identified. Is it through the sourcing? Is it through training? Is it through the hosting? Is it through the production or maintenance? And then what are the goals, right, of a bad actor? Is it to sabotage? Is it fraud? Is it trying to get, the information, the IP information? And then think about the different attack types. These are just a few about poisoning, interference, backdooring, reprogramming, evasion. And you're going to have to think about these collectively to figure out, how are you going to do your classification of your AI vulnerabilities? So this is a new space for all of us in this how do I define vulnerabilities in the AI space? When do I define and assign like a CVE versus when do I not? So thinking about that stage, the goals and the types are really going to be important when we're thinking about how we're going to go and classify our vulnerabilities in this space. So let's talk and take an example here of data poisoning. So this is a type of cyber attack where somebody goes and intentionally manipulates the data used to develop or use an AI or machine learning model. So there are just a few samples of this that we have on the slide here. Things like label flipping. There's correct labels in the training data are swapped with incorrect ones. Data injection, where there are data points that are added to the training set that are malicious. Then we think of a backdoor attack. So this is where the model is trained to behave normally, except when a specific trigger sort of is present and then it acts differently. And then also with the labeling, there could be modifying the training data without changing the labels. So here, the idea is that they are poisoning the data that's fed in to the system. So then when you as an end user are using that system, you potentially are going to get bad data or bad malicious things out of it. So when we think about protecting our data and our data models along the way and where we're getting things, or our different components in the AI space, we could think about supply chain that way. So typically we think about supply chain, and traditionally it's focusing on like building, we're in Dell, so I'm going to say building a laptop, right? All the different parts along the way and the manufacturers and the different parts. Here we get the chip, here we get this, the memory and all that. We're putting something together. And the idea of AI-related supply chain, this is focusing on the fact that we're using third-party data sets, pre-trained models, and plugins. All of these, like any supply chain, can add weaknesses. You're only as secure as your weakest point within your system. So AI supply chain attacks can occur when attack modifies or replace some machine learning library, a model within the system, especially in the case when if it's a poisoning of some kind of a sample within our training data. So we have to think about how do we best protect to make sure that when we're getting something like training data, that it didn't have any type of bad data in it. It wasn't poisoned along the way to get it to, the system that is now going to be housing it. So it could also include the data associated within the machine learning models when we think about the supply chain tech. So just a different way of thinking that we need to start thinking about when we're putting all these components together, the data together, the training models together, and making sure that like all of the security and the supply chain in the security of all the suppliers that we're using along the way are strong, so that when we build our system all together, we have a strong system with our data not being poisoned in this example. Okay, Sarah, so I'm going to pass over to you.
Yeah, so Lisa has done a really great job of describing vulnerabilities, threats, and how we've thought about these things in the supply chain. And so now what I'm asking is for you to kind of pivot forward on what you may know about vulnerability remediation and start to evaluate if when these future AI component vulnerabilities evolve, how we can extend our current business practices at the enterprise, our controls, our compliance, our software development lifecycle, to extend to be inclusive of these AI components that have risks and threats to them that will become a part of our supply chain. And so, for example, with software vulnerabilities, we've been building inventories of software. We've been leveraging software bills of materials. We've been working to coordinate communication plans in our development lifecycle with our engineering team so that when a vulnerability is reported, we can work with that engineering team, based on our inventories to understand if we're affected. We can work on a patch. We can communicate with our customers. I believe that process is going to still need to be in place as we start to introduce AI components. So thinking about some of these new AI components, your data set, your model itself, a model card that was given to you with that model that said what data set it was trained on. Thinking about how we're leveraging new types of databases like vector databases, RAG architecture for retrieval augmented generation, agents and agent architectures and frameworks, knowledge graphs. We want to extend the way we capture the inventory of these things. We will need to start thinking about how do we articulate these components in a bill of materials, perhaps an AI software bill of materials. We will want to understand who in our company we need to start coordinating with when these weaknesses and vulnerabilities exist, so we can understand if we're affected. What machine readable data do we need to do that analysis, and also to show due diligence and compliance in our lifecycle processes. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to start proactively thinking about how we're going to need to extend our software vulnerability remediation to be inclusive of AI components. Google has done a lot of really great work in this space. On the right side of the screen, you can see a screenshot from their controls for AI supply chain security, and their 4 main recommendations are capture metadata, increase integrity, organize your metadata, and share it with others. And I think those are somewhat deceptively simple, but right on point with where we need to be thinking about underneath the hood as we're looking at our internal processes where we need to be evolving. All right, next slide. Okay, so now I'm going to give you a use case. So this is a use case based off the Cyber Resiliency Act, which is a consumer compliance out of the EU for devices that have digital elements in them, such as, product made by a technology or laptop company, infrastructure, and software. In this Cyber Resiliency Act, we'll need to be able to report if, we don't want to ship any products with known exploitable vulnerabilities. If our product does have a known exploitable vulnerability after it's being used by our customers, we'll need to be able to report on that very quickly. And then over time, we'll need to be able to maintain patches for those systems. And so in this case, this regulation applies to the software. But in a couple years, as we're starting to respond to AI vulnerabilities, I believe that it will also, extend to the way we need to respond to AI vulnerabilities in those products as well. So we'll need to be able to very quickly understand, as an example, in our use case, if the data set that we used to train a model was poisoned and our attorneys are saying, hey, we need to identify where that model is, and notify our customers, swap it out, etc. Do we have the machine readable data points and the due diligence and attestation throughout the process to understand, where we brought in models trained on that data set, where we may have fine-tuned models with the data set, and how those eventually were rolled up into an container and application and shared with our customers. So that is going to be kind of an area that we all need to, as an industry, lean in to understand how to create those machine readable data points. And I think also this is going to bring us into being able to have what converged enterprise security operations. So what's classically your DevOps or your DevSecOps may now need to be inclusive of stakeholders that are doing data ops, that are doing ML and LLM ops. And so this conversion over time of our secure operations that are going to be required to build and deploy and respond to incidents with AI components is a concept I'm calling secure XOps. But it's something that I think that as we're thinking about evolving compliance for products and vulnerability remediation response, we need to start kind of being proactive in thinking forward around what are some gaps and opportunities to close those gaps before these use cases begin to happen in our products that we can work as an industry together to close. All right, next slide. All right, and so this, I believe, leads us to this idea of the parable of the blind men and the elephant. And so in this case, you have an elephant that was the different body parts of the elephant were being felt by blind men, and they would describe the same animal but in different ways based on their perspective of how they were seeing and approaching the problem. So the person holding the trunk said, oh, it feels like a snake. The person holding the trunk said, oh, this feels like a sword, and so on, as but really they're describing different parts of the same problem. And just like we talked about how AI is going to cause problems that we have currently in the industry to accelerate and more rapidly, I also think that thinking about AI applications and how do we respond to those incidents is going to cause us to have to bring in different stakeholders or different people touching different parts of the elephant in ways that we may not have yet had to tightly interact with each other before. So this is similar to that converged secure ops, just like our operational procedures will be converging. the way we attest to things in a machine readable way will potentially start to converge as well. So let's move to the next slide to see an example of that. All right, so you see, potentially you have ways that people have attested to secure hardware, and what is in a set of hardware that's shipping, ways that you can attest that this was a data set and a data set that was used to train a model. We have ways that we've been working really hard to improve how we attest to secure software development practices. We attest to a runtime environment. And then soon we may need to attest to model cards, and have machine readable ways to attest that certain data was processed by a certain model. And then kind of going on underneath the bottom across us all, we still have to disclose to governments and compliance, an attestation. This could be an EO attestation. It could be something that we do to show due diligence for something like the Cyber Resilience Act, and even future AI regulations that are just now kind of evolving through legal frameworks and processes. So I think this is what I call the AI supply chain perspectives. And so what I would encourage everyone to do is start finding the people in your enterprise, the people in your industry that may know a different part of the AI supply chain elephant than you do, because I think it's going to really require a communication of how do we take things that have worked effectively in each of these different areas and work on a way to where they can be brought together in a universal attestation framework. Next slide. All right, so this convergence is really kind of, I took each one of those body parts and kind of have put in this areas of convergence. And so as you're looking at them, and this is where I want us to start thinking about how do we need to evolve our business processes in a machine readable way to where we can attest to understanding where different AI components are in our development life cycles, so that we can quickly respond to vulnerabilities and remediate those vulnerabilities. So think about how do we extend software and hardware attestations that are already in place to other AI components? And then how are we going to articulate those components in bills of materials, in our inventories, and with cryptographically assigned attestations? And how can we begin to, in a machine readable way, begin to converge some of these attestations together? All right, next slide. All right, so this is a piece of what I propose that the industry will need as we start to think about a universal attestation framework in order to be able to really identify and respond to AI vulnerabilities in our products. I think that it's going to need to be automated, integrated, and easy to adopt. We're going to need it to do three things. We're going to need to establish integrity, report on that integrity, and verify that integrity. And so I don't think we're starting from scratch here. We're not starting from the very beginning, because we do have mechanisms to establish, report, and verify integrity already. Some of them are manual, some of them are in various stages of machine readability. But when you look across the convergence, I think that as we identify those tools and processes and mechanisms that have worked in various areas, the opportunity ahead of the industry today is to identify how we want to bring those together into a universal attestation framework that I believe is going to be required for AI applications and components. All right, next slide. All right, so nobody, I think, right now has an answer, but I know that based off of how things have evolved in software development, I see that those AI applications and components are going to really require us to think a little bit more deeply and proactively around these different areas. And so what I've done is I put together this slide that talks about those different places where we need to start extending ideas that we currently have to become inclusive of the broader needs of the AI application vulnerability remediation response. And so if you have access to the PDF of this deck, clicking on each one of those links will bring you down to a slide where you can see a list of resources that I've been using to kind of study and educate myself on what's kind of current state of those in the industry, so we can look at what does it take as these are converging to have a common universal framework. All right, next slide. Does that bring us to the end? Okay, yeah.
To the end.
So
I'm almost positive, although systems, I'll just bring the list of industry reference links that you were just talking about there. So here's a bunch of them that will be in the PDF for everybody to click through.
Yeah, and I would imagine, based off of the personal experience of you as an audience member listening to this, you have experience in one of these areas. And so what this does is it lets you begin to connect and explore to some of the other areas, and maybe even find people around your enterprise or the industry that you can share your expertise with, as they're trying to seek to understand your area of expertise as well.
Right. Okay, well, that wraps us up. Thanks everyone for attending. Thanks, Sarah, as always, for being a great partner.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed putting this presentation together with you, because you are kind of boots on the ground for vulnerability remediation, and it's been really great to partner with you, thinking about how things are going to evolve and how we work to really advance that story together. So thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, yay.